Well, BG, here we are. Another day, another boat. Well, I mean 2 boats.
If you want a boat on the cheap, you probably could have one of these 2 for free, basically, if you're willing to go get it. I mean, boating doesn't have to be expensive. It's only as expensive as you are willing to make it. Sure, there's the old acronym out there, bust out another 1,000, but the reality is, there are ways to cut corners in boating. I mean, heck, for you could just buy half the boat like this guy did. And just like some of the things we'll witness in this week's episode of Boneheaded Boaters of the Week. Now, one thing in boating that may be cheaper than you think is taking your boat to the Bahamas. If you've ever been interested in that and are going to the Fort Lauderdale Boat Show this week, hang out till the end of the video. Now, of course, you don't really need a boat to go out there and enjoy the water. There are plenty of ways you can go out there and do that for free, basically, without owning a boat. Now, obviously, I get it. This is not the same as being out on the water and enjoying it from the safety and pleasure of a boat. I mean, they're having a little bit more of an adventurous time, even though they're still really on land. Yet, I feel like they probably could use life jackets in this one. So now that we've covered a few cheap ways to get out on the water without owning a vessel, let's talk about some cheap ways to get out on the water while owning one. One of the ways is maybe cutting a few corners on the type of vessel you will purchase. Sure, you want to go out there and go fishing 50 miles offshore. That doesn't necessarily mean you need a 50-foot center console with quads on the back to pull that off. In fact, many vessels will actually do it on calm days. So as long as you're willing to pick your day, you can be like this guy, take the jet ski out there, tow a few fuel cans with you just to be safe. And of course, maybe you want an airboat, but your budget only allows for the $5,000 20-year-old center console. Don't let that stop you. Of course, one of the best budget ways to get out there on the water is to find something you can cross-utilize. Something that's not just a summertime play toy. For example, instead of buying a jet ski, maybe you can get one of these, and then you've got something both for the summer and the winter. And of course, most of you watching probably already own a car, so why buy a boat if you can just use the car like this guy? Now, I don't really recommend this one, but I have seen plenty of videos of people out there doing water sports and other things from the back of a vehicle versus actually taking a boat out. Now, of course, most of you are going to want a boat, so where do we cut corners if we have to buy the boat? Well, we can cut corners on some of the things we put on the boat.
That fishing rod is tied to that log holding the boat.
Now see, this comes back down to cross-utilization. Our crew there decided they were going to go ahead and use a fishing rod instead of an anchor, so they can go ahead and skip purchasing an anchor, which can be an expensive purchase. Apparently, this guy decided to skip it as well. Now, maybe he has an anchor. I didn't see one up front, but I got a feeling he was maybe trying to save on docking and things didn't go to plan. And speaking of docking, that is another expensive part of boating. Wherever you decide you're going to keep that vessel, some of you will go the more expensive path and choose to get a boat lift thinking it's going to protect your boat. But as we can see here, that's not always the case. Sometimes spending a little more money doesn't always necessarily mean you're getting the better product. And of course, there may always be cheaper alternatives out there on how to get the boat into the water versus using a lift. Now, I know what you're thinking, BG, they could have just built a dock, but docks are expensive. Sometimes you'll need to look for cheaper alternatives on that as well. Kind of like this situation here, where you can buy one of those little floating docks. And the best way to buy one of these cheap is going ahead and buying one used. The only problem is sometimes they can be expensive to ship or move, so you may have to get a little inventive on how you decide to get it over to your place. Now, I know you're thinking there must be some other alternatives that are even less expensive than this to docking your boat, and of course there are. Now, many people will choose to trailer their vessels instead of docking like this due to the added cost of docking, but of course you've got to make sure you choose the right trailer, which can be a little costly from time to time. And of course, if you buy a trailer, you're going to have to do trailer maintenance, but that's one way you can save a little money is by doing that trailer maintenance yourself. And speaking of saving money, nothing like saving money by doing your boat maintenance yourself as well. Now, another very expensive part of boating is going to be electronics. If you've never really looked, marine GPSs can go upwards into the thousands of dollars very quickly and very easily. So if you feel like you're comfortable out there on a boat and knowing what you're doing, you can skip buying the GPS. I mean, surely you can find your way back into the inlet. I mean, it's marked. There's no way you can really miss it, right? And of course, there's paper charts you can use where you can go ahead and do the calculations to actually figure out where you are and where you need to get back to. The only thing I really recommend about the paper charts, if you're going to use the paper charts coming back toward the inlet, probably look up from the paper charts as you approach the inlet and use visual navigation instead of continuing to look down. Now, another thing I personally would recommend if you're going to be out on the water is tow insurance, but if you want to save money, I guess you could skip it. Now, I know what you're thinking after seeing all this. You're like, VG, wait a minute, I'm not sure I want to own a boat. After seeing this, I might have preferred that first method you talked about ways to get out on the water without owning a boat. Well, there still are some other cheap ways we didn't even discuss. Of course, you could charter a fishing boat, but yes, that does get a little pricey. One way you can cut back on the price on this is maybe going out on some days where they don't have anybody scheduled to, or picking up on a canceled charter where somebody was scheduled to go out but decided they were going to cancel for some reason, but you're willing to go anyway. But one thing I would recommend on this one is if you're picking up somebody's canceled charter, you may want to find out what the exact reason they decided to cancel was. So as you can see from our conversation today, there actually are some ways to get out on the water relatively inexpensive. And just as a general recap, one of the things you're going to look for, see if you can get out there and try and find cheap docking. So before you buy the boat, go ahead and see if you can find a cheap place to keep it first. If not, see if you can find some ways to go ahead and save on that trailer cost. And then lastly, you're going to start looking for the boat as well. And just as we mentioned before, remember, boating is only as expensive as you want it to be. It's actually pretty cheap to go on Marketplace, find 2 used kayaks and a used electric motor and get yourself out there on the water. Thanks for watching, crew, and for those who hung out to the end, as we mentioned, we will be at the Fort Lauderdale Boat Show this coming week. For anybody who's looking to take their boat to the Bahamas, we'll be hosting our annual seminar on how to do so. The first one will be Thursday, October 30th at 1 p.m., and we will follow that one up as we come back on Saturday, November 1st, and we'll be at the Convention Center at 3:30 p.m. Be sure to stop by, check out one of the seminars, and say hi. But thanks for watching, crew. Hope you enjoyed this episode of Boneheaded Boaters of the Week. If you did, please make sure you hit the subscribe button and hit the like button and let us know. Thanks for watching.